Hello everyone, this is Rutvik IELTS. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I am going to give you the most powerful words for getting 7+ band score in writing task 2. Without waste of time, let's kick off this video. First word is alleviate. That means decrease. Let's look at the example. In order to alleviate these negative impacts, parents need to take scrupulous steps. The doctor tried to alleviate her symptoms. Frequent stretching can prevent and alleviate the pain. Second word is ailment, which means disease. Let's look at the example. More people die from life-threatening ailments. She suffered from chronic back ailment. A great deal of ailments originates from stomach indigestion. Third word is amalgamation, means mixture. Let's look at the example. This choice is amalgamation of advantages and disadvantages. This article is an amalgamation of two different books. The script will be based on an amalgamation of two screenplays, both based on the same source. Fourth word is amenity. That means facility. Let's look at the example. Museums are public amenity and therefore they should be free. The Skyline Hotel offers another unique amenity. As a parent, I always look for a job that offers the amenity of on-site childcare. Fifth word is ample, which means enough. Let's look at the example. There are ample evidences to suggest that these therapies work. They had ample money for the trip. You will have ample opportunity to ask questions after the talk. Arduous. That means hard. Let's look at the example. Parties are arduous for shy people. The task was more arduous than he calculated. The work was arduous. Ascertain means decide. Let's look at the example. These ascertain the quality of life that most of us will have. A postmortem was ordered to try to ascertain the cause of death. You should ascertain the level of insurance covered from the car rental company. Attain. That means get. Let's look at the example. Company would have never attained respect again from their customers. If you care enough for a result, you will most certainly attain it. Both trees occasionally attain a height of 90 feet. Augment, which means increase. Let's look at the example. Another factor is the augmenting levels of poverty around the world. He would have to find work to augment his income. The impact of the report was augmented by its timing. Commence means begin or start. Let's look at the example. We have just commenced new course of computer. The performances will commence in a minute. We will commence building work in August of next year. Comprise means include. Let's look at the example. New technologies comprising internet, television, electronic media, means of transportation. 12 departments comprise this university. It would comprise representative of all the city. Dirt that means shortage. Let's look at the example. There is a dearth of evidence to support the claims of their support. There seems to be a dearth of good young players at the moment. There was a dearth of reliable information on the subject. Curb, which means stop. Let's look at the example. Development of antibiotics plays main role to curb the death ratio all over the world. Government should act to curb tax evasion. We can curb juvenile delinquency by education. Deem means believe. Let's look at the example. I tend to deem that it is unlikely to describe the changes in life. I deem it advisable to buy property now. I deem it an honor to be invited. Deem, that means consider. Let's look at the example. I tend to deem that people can work in many countries. I deem it advisable to purchase the shares in the railway now. She did not deem lightly of the issue. Diminish, which means decrease. Let's look at the example. These people need to stretch their arms and diminish health problems. We should try to diminish the cost of production. These drugs diminish blood flow to the brain. Detrimental, that means harmful. Let's look at the example. Another possible detrimental problem is that there are fewer houses. These chemicals have a detrimental impact on the environment. Smoking is detrimental to your health. Eminent, which means famous. Let's look at the example. Nowadays, leading eminent newspapers are available on internet. We are expecting the arrival of an eminent scientist. The students are expecting the arrival of an eminent sportsman. Duly means properly. Let's look at the example. He can choose how he is going to study duly. Here are your travel documents, all duly signed. Your suggestion has been duly noted. Explore, that means search. Let's look at the example. The purpose of space exploration is to explore new lands. Management needs to explore ways of improving office security. Let us explore the possibilities for improvement. Emulate, which means follow. Let's look at the example. It will be easy for him to emulate the customs of the new place. She hopes to emulate her sister's sporting achievements. They hope to emulate the success of other software companies. Exquisite means perfect. Let's look at the example. Besides, our past is our glorious and exquisite culture and heritage. The jewelry showed exquisite craftsmanship. We admire her exquisite project work. Exquisite, that means beautiful. Let's look at the example. Students cannot accomplish their work exquisitely. Her wedding dress was exquisite. Mr. Patel's photography is exquisite. Flit, which means move. Let's look at the example. Transportation proffers chance to people to flit from one place to another quickly. They could flit from subject to subject. Bats flit about in the twilight. Extensive means large. Let's look at the example. English is used extensively in many countries at present. He possesses an extensive knowledge of banking. Her knowledge of English grammar is very extensive. Hazard, that means risk. Let's look at the example. There is a hazard in using internet too much. Polluted water sources are a hazard to wildlife. He put his life in hazard to save me. Futile, which means useless. Let's look at the example. Other forms of vocational training are futile. The president described these activities as a futile. It would be futile to protest. Hindrance means obstacle. Let's look at the example. Sometimes strict rules become a hindrance for their creativity. The floods have been a major hindrance to relief efforts. The new regulations are actually a great hindrance to teachers. Heed, that means notice. Let's look at the example. Some people do not heed these fancy parties. They gave little heed to the rumors. The government was taking little heed of these threats. Incessant means continuous. Let's look at the example. It has been incessant prospective industry for information. We have had incessant snowfall since afternoon. The noise of bombs and guns was incessant. Incredible, which means unbelievable. Let's look at the example. Rising population causes incredible problems in undeveloped and developing countries. The latest missiles can be fired with incredible accuracy. The plot of this book is incredible. Inimical means harmful. Let's look at the example. This is not just an inimical problem for local farmers. Price controls are inimical to economic growth. These policies are inimical to the interest of society. Inevitable, which means that you cannot avoid or prevent. Let's look at the example. Some employment experience is inevitable to a child's learning. The accident was inevitable consequences of carelessness. A rise in the interest rate seems inevitable. Intricate means complicated. Let's look at the example. People face an intricate decision when they buy their own home. I have a novel with an intricate plot. The watch mechanism is extremely intricate and very difficult to repair. Inordinate, that means excessive. Let's look at the example. Children spend time inordinately in front of TV. They spend an inordinate amount of time talking. Tasting is taking up an inordinate amount of teacher's time. Perilous, which means dangerous. Let's look at the example. Unemployment is one of the most perilous issues in the industrial world. The country roads are quite perilous. The journey through the jungle was perilous. Manifold, that means many. Let's look at the example. These people may prefer manifold ways of relaxation. The city council has a manifold plan to beautify the city. The reasons for this situation are manifold. Proffer means impart or give. Let's look at the example. Antibiotics are proffered to most people across the world. What advice would you proffer to someone starting up in business? I didn't think it wise to proffer an opinion. Patronize, that means encourage. Let's look at the example. The benefit of this approach is that it patronizes the staff to work harder. We do not patronize them by telling them what they already know. We patronize our neighborhood stores. Prominent, which means famous. Let's look at the example. Prominent companies prefer to employ the people who can speak English well. It is rare to find a prominent politician with few political enemies. He is a prominent physician. Perpetual means continuing for a long period of time without interruption. Let's look at the example. Modern technology is perpetually changing the world's living standards. He was elected perpetual president. He is on a perpetual search for truth. Reckless means irresponsible. Let's look at the example. They should also be banned if accident caused due to their recklessness. She was a good rider but reckless. He had always been reckless with money. Profound, which means deep. Let's look at the example. It is interesting to hear from a guide about profound historical events. Her speech made a profound impact on everyone. He had a profound knowledge of physics. Renounce means give up. Let's look at the example. We should renounce reading from festivals, parades, and celebration. Eliot was unable to renounce the world he knew. We absolutely renounce all form of terrorism. Recapitulation means conclusion. Let's look at the example. In recapitulation, my personal view is that there is no clear answer. Let us briefly recapitulate the steps of series. At the start of each class, the professor will recapitulate yesterday's lecture. Shun, which means avoid. Let's look at the example. However, this does not mean that the arts should be completely shunned. They wear a simple clothes and shun modern contrivances. But they will shun countries where there is no prospect of a juicy profit. Redundant means excessive. Let's look at the example. It would have to hire some employees redundantly. The picture has too much redundant detail. There are too many redundant words in this book. Succor, which means help. Let's look at the example. First of all, television succors a child to his or her range of interests. They were busy providing succor to the injured. At the same time, rural medical succor system is implemented. Scrupulous means cautious. Let's look at the example. We must take some scrupulous steps to deal with economical, social, political, and ecological problems of the world. He was scrupulous in all his business dealings. The research has been carried out with scrupulous attention to detail. Strive means try. Let's look at the example. People should strive to remember their history and pass it down to the next generation. We have to strive for what we want. We must continue to strive for greater efficiency.